Hello, everybody. In this lecture, we'll be talking about different types of infections and how they are caused. Infectious diseases are caused by pathogenic microorganisms such as bacteria, viruses, parasites, or fungi. And these diseases can be spread directly or indirectly from person to another. The zoonotic diseases are those diseases that are infectious and can be spread to humans from animals. An infection occurs when another organism enters your body and causes the disease. And these organisms can be diverse and include viruses, bacteria, fungi, parasites, etc. So, talking in detail about the different types of infections, there are five varieties of infections and they're classified based on the causative organism. So, it could be a viral infection, a bacterial infection, a fungal infection, a parasite infection, or a prion infection. So, now talking about the viral infections. Viruses are very small infectious organisms, which are, as a matter of fact, smaller than a bacteria, that are composed of a piece of genetic material surrounded by a protein shell. Some viruses might also have an envelope or other features on their surface, like, for example, now that we are going through all this, I think I can give you the best example of the coronavirus, which is an RNA virus that has got the genetic material embedded inside it, and it is enclosed by an envelope. And this envelope also has protein spiking out of it. So, hoping that all of you have seen a coronavirus, I can assume that you know how it looks like. And those spikes are proteins, they are an additional feature. And that circular covering of the organism is its envelope. These viruses are basically parasitic in nature and they require a host cell to continue with the life cycle. And so, once this virus enters the host cell, it will take over the host reproductive or replicatory mechanism or the host cell replicatory or reproductive mechanism to be able to produce its progeny. And once these viral progenies are ready, they are released from the host cell, and it is a kind of process in which most of the host cells are ruptured. So, talking about viral infections, there are a variety of viral infections, and they are caused by a variety of viruses. So, talking in general, there is encephalitis or meningitis or inflammation of the brain, common cold, gingivostomatitis, pharyngitis, cardiovascular disorder, hepatitis, a variety of skin infections, sexually transmitted diseases like herpes, HIV, etc., pancreatitis, gastroenteritis, myelitis, pneumonia, parotitis, and conjunctival or eye infections. Next, moving on to the bacterial infections. The bacteria are single celled microorganisms that are very diverse in nature and they have a variety of shapes and size when it comes to their appearances. These bacteria can be found in all sorts of environment. They could be found in soils, they could be found in water, and they could also be found on organisms. And they have this capacity to survive extreme conditions like extreme temperature, extreme radiations, or even extreme acidic conditions, etc. So, with all this, they can cause a variety of diseases, and the kind of diseases caused by a bacteria are like the bacterial meningitis, otitis media, pneumonia, skin infections, like sexually transmitted diseases like that are caused by a range of bacterial species, the UTI or urinary tract infection, gastritis, food poisoning or botulism, upper respiratory tract infection, sinusitis, and conjunctivitis or eye infections. Next, moving on to the fungal infections. There are not many fungal infections that affect the humankind, but whatever fungal infections are already existing, they themselves are commonly found across the human species. Fungi are a diverse group of organisms and they can include even yeasts and molds. And they are found throughout the environment, including soil and indoors in moist area like bathrooms and also our body. And they may be microscopic or macroscopic as well. Like you might have seen mushrooms. Mushrooms are fungi, and then you have this black mold that is formed on old bread. That is a fungi. Both of them are macroscopic in nature, but although mushroom is more macroscopic than the mold that is found on the bread, likewise there are fungi that are microscopic also. And the diseases that are commonly caused by fungal infections, that are commonly classified as fungal infections, are candidiasis, cryptococcosis, pneumocystis jirovecii, aspergillosis, tinea plus, maduromycosis, blastomycosis, histoplasmosis, coccidioidomycosis, paracoccidioidomycosis, and mucormycosis. Now, moving on to the different parasite infections that are found. Parasites are primarily those organisms that completely live or exist on an host organism to get food and nutrients from the host. They contribute in no way to the survival or development of the host. That is the first thing. And there are three different types of parasites that can cause illness in humans. The first kind of parasite is a protozoa, which is a small single celled organism or set of organisms. And then we have helminths, which are larger and worm like organisms. And finally, we have the ectoparasites, that are organisms like flea, ticks, and lice. So, these parasites can actually play a great role in causing infections to human beings. Protozoans are the most primitive organisms. They are single celled and they can cause a lot of diseases like malaria, like the trypanosoma infections, etc. And then we have the helminths, which mostly infect the digestive system. And finally, we have the fleas, ticks, and lice, which are ectoparasites because they are found only on the surface of the skin and they tend to suck blood from the organism. Coming to the final type of infection, it is called a prion infection, where prion actually isn't an organism but it is a protein, and it can affect normal body proteins and cause them to form abnormal shapes or fold into abnormal shapes, leading to development of dementia and difficulties in mobility or speaking. These diseases are very rare, and only about like 300 cases of prion infections are reported in the United States every year. While some of these prion conditions can be inherited, others can be acquired through contaminated food, and therefore prion infections are considered so like or they are considered infections in the first place. And the classic examples for prion infections include the Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, or better known as a type of mad cow disease, and Kuru. So now talking about the modes of transmission of infections or infectious agents, there are two means in which these infectious pathogens can be transmitted. The first way is known as a direct mean, and it is subdivided into three different ways in which infectious diseases can be spread. And the first one is called is better known as the function person to person transmission, which is a common way for infectious diseases to spread through the direct transfer of bacteria, viruses, or other germs from one person to another. And this can occur when an individual with the infectious pathogen touches, kisses, coughs, or sneezes on someone who is not affected or who is not infected. And these kind of pathogens also can have the capacity to spread through the exchange of body fluids, either by transfusion of blood or by sexual contact. And furthermore, such a mode of transmission might not necessarily involve only symptomatic carriers, meaning that a person is not necessarily symptomatic or displaying the symptoms of the disease when he can transmit it. And technically, such a process of transmission from person to person is known as anthroponosis or anthroponosis, singular and plural. And then the next kind of transmission that we have to be occurring directly is from animal to person, where a person can be infected by being bitten or scratched by an infected animal. Also, handling of animal waste can be considered hazardous in this regard. For example, if somebody has a cat as a pet, and if they want to scoop off the cat litter or something, there is a possibility of contracting toxoplasmosis disease by this process. And this is such a method, or such a transmission is considered animal to person transmission, and it is technically called zoonosis. And the last kind of direct transmission of infectious agents is found to occur from a mother to an unborn child, where a pregnant woman can pass germs to her unborn baby. This can happen either through the placenta or during birth, or also via breastfeeding. Mother to unborn child mode of transmission is better known as MTCT. Next, we have indirect transmission, where many germs can linger on an inanimate object such as a tabletop, doorknob, or a faucet handle and be transmitted to the next person via contact. So, if you touched a doorknob handled by someone ill with either flu or cold, for example, and you can pick up the pathogens left behind by that person. And with this action, and after, or possibly after this action, if you touched your eyes, mouth, nose, or any of your facial regions without washing the hands, it may lead to an infection. And this can be classically explained in the current situation by how the coronavirus is believed to be transmitted. So, we are all talking about how we should avoid touching the face, wear a mask, sanitize our hands frequently, wash our hands frequently, etc. This indicates that the coronavirus disease or the COVID 19 disease is essentially transmitted through indirect means apart from direct transfer as well. So, following this, we can also classify insect bites as indirect means of transmission, where some germs actually rely on insect carriers such as mosquitoes, fleas, lice, or ticks to move from the host to a new host. And such carriers are known as vectors. And mosquitoes are known to carry malaria, parasite, dengue, or the West Nile virus pathogen. Additionally, there are deer ticks that may carry the bacterium that causes the Lyme disease. And the last means or last mode of transmission of pathogens would be food or water contamination. This is another way in which disease causing germs can infect a person, either through contaminated food or contaminated water. For example, cholera, which is caused by Vibrio cholerae, is mainly associated with transmission through contaminated water. And such a mechanism of transmission allows the germ to spread to many people through a single source. Now, moving on to the chain of infection, where we talk about the kind of germs, we kind of summarize the kind of germs, the reservoirs, the portals of entry and exit, mode of transmission, and susceptible hosts. So, talking about germs, they are also called the agents of the infection. They could be bacteria, virus, parasites, fungi, or prions, and they could be having reservoirs in people, animals, which could be both domesticated as well as wild animals, food, soil, and water, and their portal of entry into the organism are mainly through the mouth, cuts in the skin, and eyes, while the portal of exit can be through mouth by the means of vomit or saliva, through cuts in the skin by the means of blood, or during diapering or toileting. And the mode of transmission is either direct or indirect, where it could happen through contact, droplets, contaminated food, contaminated water, animals, and insects. So, the susceptible people for such infections usually are babies, young children, elderly people with a weakened immune system, or what we know as comorbidities such as diabetes, immune suppression, etc., or unimmunized people or people who are already taking immune suppressant drugs to carry out certain medical exercise, or in general if the pathogen is like really infectious and really robust, they can infect anybody, as a matter of fact. So with this, I would like to conclude today's lecture. If you have any doubts, you can always write a mail to me. Thank you all.